Welcome to the Fulfilled After 50 podcast. We are your hosts, Alice
and Carol. Join us each week for your fun dose of inspiration and healthy tips you can use every day so you can live the healthy and fulfilled life you desire and deserve.
Hi, everybody. It's Carol.
And this is Alice
with Fulfilled After 50. And we have an interesting podcast for you. We introduced it a little bit last week, but we have a guest with us today, and we are super excited.
We are.
It is Brittany Matheny. And we're going to let her tell a little bit about what she does.
Yeah, so we'd love for you to introduce yourself, Brittany. Tell everybody where you are from and what you do and how that all came about.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So I live in Charleston, South Carolina, born and raised here. And I started out with a company called Pure Romance. I am a consultant with them, and our focus is to empower, educate, and entertain women in a safe environment. So we do in-home parties for women so that they have an environment where they can ask questions that they have about the bedroom, questions about their bodies that maybe they aren't comfortable talking to doctors about just yet, or to their friends even. So I give them that safe environment that they have.
Awesome. That is so great. So when you were introducing, women, their bodies, and then just if they are in like long-term marriages. I've been married for, 18 years. It's the second marriage for me, but Carol's been
about
married
27 years, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as the kids leave home and stuff, you're trying to spark that little extra in your marriage. So do you counsel women? Because, our podcast really is geared to women entering 50 and over. So it's this season of life renders a lot of different things, I think, that we experience that sometimes is taboo and not many people feel like it's okay to talk about. So it's and Carol and I, we really need to make ourselves feel confident enough to be oh, can we carry this off,
Right, because you run into people who, they're at this period of time where they may become empty nesters and they're jazzed about it. It's like, whoa, we're rekindling. And then there's other people who may be more like ships that have been passing in the night, so to speak, and they're having to restart some conversations and some, some action around that area, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I would use the word counseling per se, but I do sit down with women and talk them through it, which I guess is a type of counseling, but I'm not a counselor. But I sit down with women. I do it in the party setting where we're in a group, but then I also do one-on-one so that people really have that opportunity to ask questions that maybe they don't want anyone else to know about. Maybe someone in their life isn't aware of the things that they're going through, just like you talked about how sometimes you've been in a relationship or in a marriage for so long and you're just kind of sitting there trying to figure out what the next step is and how to open up that communication or that relationship of intimacy that you once had. Now the children are gone and you don't know where to go from there. So I sit down. I actually met with a client this past Saturday and had a good 30-minute conversation with her where we talked about this exact thing. Just trying to give her tips for her and her husband to open up that line of communication again and bring that intimacy that they once had back into their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think it's more present than we know of, right? And just women just aren't comfortable. They just don't really know who to go talk to about it, and, what they can do.
Mm-hmm. No,
so what kind of tips then would you give her, Brittany?
So I gave her a few. One, which kind of goes along with last week's podcast. You mentioned writing notes. I actually recommended that for her. But the reason that I recommended it was a little different. One, I did want her to have that sweet note moment with him. But really what I wanted was for her to have a chance to sit down and get her thoughts together for what she wanted to say so that she really was able to say it in a way that didn't feel attacking. Because sometimes when we lose that part of our relationship and we try to talk to the other person, we don't form our words correctly. and then they feel like they have to respond immediately, and they sometimes need a chance to just sit down and take it all in. So that's what I recommended to her, was to write him a note, a letter, letting him know, what she misses in the relationship, in their marriage, so that they could reopen that, and it would give him a little bit of time to mull it over and be able to respond. That way she wasn't just talking at him, that she was actually giving full communication. So that was a big one that I gave her, was giving communication, but at the same time making sure that she did it in a way that was positive. That way she wasn't, just giving the negative feedback.
Right, yes. And I also just loved the other part of your business that you decided to bring on too. And I guess what you were doing this weekend was being an officiant.
Yes, I absolutely love that. It goes full circle because I'm able to put together the ceremonies, be there with them on their special day, and then afterwards I can help them if they have questions on communication, because it doesn't have to be just intimacy questions. It could just be communication in general. So I really love that it all goes full circle together, so that I can help them get married and then stay married.
Yeah, right. It like all goes together along with that 5 love languages as well too. Like, just figuring out what is your love language. And I think once you figure that out, you're able to understand your partner a little bit better, right?
Yes. I definitely agree with that.
Yes.
Right. So what other sort of tips did you have perhaps for somebody in that situation?
So she was interested in bringing in a few different items into the bedroom, just because they have been lacking in that department. Again, I told her that it needs to be a communication. You can't just bring something in and expect them to be like, oh, surprise. So I gave her a few tips on types of items that she could bring in. I had actually done that the week prior to us meeting on Saturday. And sometimes it's not what you think. It could be something as simple as a perfume, just something that brings in a nice scent that reminds them of something in the past.
Right.
Just brings that beginning of the relationship back, because sometimes we just need something to remember from then.
Right.
So that was something that we talked about. I recommended books. So there are 2 books that I absolutely love in my business, and I recommend them for couples. So I do not know who wrote the books, but I can give you the names. But there's one, it's called Tickle Her Fancy and Tickle His Pickle. But they're phenomenal, because what you can do as a couple is you each read your respective book and highlight the things that you're interested in. And then you can trade off so that the other one can read it and then really take it in, and then decide what you want to try together.
Right.
So that was a big recommendation.
Right.
Another,
I'll say that all goes back to communication again. I mean, it
does. So much of this is communication. Another is an intimacy challenge. I usually recommend a 21-day challenge, because they typically say 21 days to build a habit. But I told her, I'm like, if you can just do a 5-day intimacy challenge, even that could really help you to build that up again. So there's different things that you can do. It can be as little as just touching the other person, touching their arm, touching their hand, giving them a kiss in public. So often couples get so stuck, and as we have been in the relationship for so long, we feel that public displays of affection aren't for us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And in all honesty, just something as simple as a hug or a peck on the lips or the cheek out in public can really help. There's been studies done that 78% of couples that are using forms of PDA are actually in happier relationships. And it actually helps those around them, because when we see couples out there with these displays of affection, we see that there's positivity out there and that long-term relationships can last, like that there's still affection out there.
Right.
I get that. Yeah. Sometimes my husband and I will be out, and our kids are now, one's about to turn 18, our youngest, up to 23. We'll be out somewhere and we'll give each other just a quick peck. It's like, oh, mom and dad. But you know that deep in your heart, you want to see your parents happy. And so even though then they'll come back later, and you can tell it doesn't really bother them that much. It's kind of like one of those more endearing things, I think.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
Yeah.
And I was at the, this is a side thing, but I was at the Verizon store recently with my daughter, and the guy that was helping, sometimes you're there forever. And he was really this cute guy, kind of only been married less than a year. And he said, when I'm sitting here with people, I ask them what's their biggest piece of advice for a long-term marriage. And first he had asked how long I was married. And don't you know that the guy said 9 times out of 10, the one thing that everybody says is communication.
Yeah.
People who have long-term marriages, just like you were sharing, communication is so important. So it goes back to that as well.
But you know what, Brittany, how do you break down that barrier between couples when they feel insecure to really talk about that? I mean, even though you have been a couple for a long time, but you still really feel insecure about talking to that person. How do you break down like that barrier?
Good question.
That is a good question, and that one is difficult because it is on such a deep level. So that is one of the reasons that I also recommend writing things down.
Yeah.
Because for us, sometimes it's easier to actually put it to paper,
right,
because we're thinking it through, versus trying to talk to someone face to face. That can be very intimidating. And it's, I don't want to necessarily use the word, I'm trying to think of the word that I want to even use with this. It can be intimidating sometimes. And it can be difficult. So I honestly think just sitting down and writing it down is the biggest piece of advice that I can give, in all honesty, because I feel like when we take that time to really put pen to paper, it's just so different. It turns things differently in our minds.
It does.
So that we are sometimes able to push back some of those fears that we had, because we're actually putting our thoughts down to the paper, and it gives us a different mindset.
Right. Yeah. I so agree with that. Like anytime like I'm struggling, it's like, of course I journal every day, but if I am feeling, even I've done this with both my kids too. It's like, if there was like some times of just, button heads, or we're not seeing eye to eye. Like I have written both my kids like 3-page letters. Okay, this is what's going on. It's like, how can we move past this? And it's like your spouse or your relationship's no different, right? It's like before I even like project those words, it's like I just have to write it down and like, okay, how does that look in? And so that's so good.
Yeah, that's my biggest piece. You can see everything goes to communication, right?
Yes.
even communication with ourselves.
Right. Yeah. So how did you get into the business, Brittany? Like what made you be like, there's a need and I can help with that?
So it's really funny. I got into the business because I had a really good friend that was doing the same line of work. And she just looked like she was having fun with it. So that's what really drew me in originally, was the fun aspect. But I noticed within my first month of doing it that I was making such an impact on people that I didn't even realize was possible. And I've always been really big on that. I feel like I'm not putting forth my best efforts and what I'm capable in life if I'm not actually actively helping people. That is my biggest thing. I'm very passionate about helping those around me. So I started it for fun and then fell in love. Absolutely fell in love with it. That's why I do the health expos, and I do seminars at churches and work one-on-one with couples and helping them with the communication. So I fell in love.
Yeah, they say if you're having fun at what you're doing, then you never work a day in your life, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, we just appreciate you just shedding some light into, you know, our audience and just like putting a little bit of a lighter touch on sometimes a subject that can be a little bit like intimidating, awkward, hold you back.
Oh, heavy, yeah. Yeah, so if people are looking to reach out to you or wanted to ask you additional questions or bring you into a group, how do they reach out to you?
So the best way is I am on social media. So on Facebook, you can find me as Brittany Matheny, and that's BrittanyMathena. The other way is email, which you ladies, I know you have my email, but for those that would need it, that would be Pure Romance, and that's PUREROMANCE by BY Brittany Gale, and Gale is GAIL @gmail.com.
Okay. Awesome. We'll put all those links in our show notes for anybody to reach out to you. But we appreciate your time and being on our podcast today.
Right. I love your whole confidence about this whole issue and this whole wonderful piece of people's lives, and your passion for helping them through this and to really be enjoying relationships. So anyhow, appreciate you very much.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay, guys. So if you have not subscribed, hit subscribe to our podcast. We're Fulfilled After 50, and we are coming to you every single week with a new subject matter, something to encourage, inspire, just help you out in day-to-day life. So we will see you next week. Have a good day, everybody.
Take care. Bye.